Good evening to all of you. Moderator of this program, Dr. Ken Raghavan, very straightforward, upright civil servant who makes us proud time and again. Fellow speakers, Dr. Martin, Dr. Murthy, Deepthi, and man behind CPPR, my dear friend Dhanraj, who brought me here. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I see some of my old friends here, Mr. K George, former mayor. He is not old, I have grown older. You know, he's for the last 20 years. Nice to see you after a long time, sir. Some of our other friends here. Good evening once again. I have been asked to deal with the subject from an auditor's perspective. Simple reason that I audit the accounts of CPPR. And one thing I can assure you is that there is no black money in CPPR. So I don't know whether it's an auditor's perspective or it's a different perspective altogether. This is something which came as a shock to every one of us. A lot of things have been said and heard. I'm sure there is going to be some amount of repetition, but then bear with us, my presentation is going to be very short in terms of that. But then I don't know whether someone has concluded whether it is bad or good. When my presentation is over, I would give my views on this very clearly, and presentation probably would speak for itself that things have not moved in the right direction. Can I have the next slide, please? We start with typical of accountants to get into the basics that ending something as a legal tender is what is known as demonetization. Dr. Martin was saying this cannot be strictly in the sense of a demonetization. And here, this time around, the PM says that this is with the singular objective of curbing the circulation of black money, which is funding terrorists, which is affiliated with so many other evil aspects of the society, and this has come as a shock. The next slide, please. And in fact, the ministry and the lawmakers had given warning signals well in advance. The inclusive banking inclusion, which started off as the Jan Dhan Yojana, was to bring the rural India, the India that lives in the villages, to the formal banking system, which still remains a very distant dream. In fact, 25.82 crore Jan Dhan Yojana accounts were opened, but 23% of them are still zero balance accounts, means that 23% are not still in the mainstream of banking. So that is step one. It's like a circle. Aadhaar also could be included in the networking process. And then the other thing was the income disclosure scheme, where, right from the time the government took over, I have no political inclination, so even if I talk something about politics, it doesn't mean real politics, it's only a viewpoint which I'm trying to express. The declaration is 64,000 crores and the government mopped up about 30,000 crores in this. So income disclosure scheme, as it was ending its closure, the PM and the finance minister were giving signals that if you're not coming clean under this scheme, which is an amnesty, and you would have very, very grave consequences. Probably this is a warning which they had said, and many of them have not, because 64,000 declared is only a very minuscule portion of what is lying still buried. I'm coming to that a little later. So with this warning signals is that on 8th of November evening, this shock came of demonetization. Next slide, please. And I'm sure this would have been discussed, but as an accountant, I think we have every day, we have situations where, corruption, in the previous, one of the slides, he said corruption runs in our DNA. Whether that is true with every one of us is a different question, but corruption is something which creates, when we go for a case with income tax or sales tax as an accountant, see that people sometimes ask for favors, and then to cover it up, the counterparty, the officer sitting at the other side of the table, ask for a favor, which we call it in different terms, but corruption is something which is giving rise to black money. Unaccounted transactions, large number of transactions. Because one of the reasons is that the complex tax structure we have in our country, difficult to understand, difficult to comprehend, difficult to comply. So large amount of transactions go unaccounted. I can share an example, a discussion we had in Northern Kerala with a jewellery group. I was shocked that they're accounting only 8% of their actual turnover. That came in for a study before us, and then we refused to take it up. 92% of the turnover is unaccounted, just 8%, imagine. And they want to come clean, they wanted ways out, then it is too difficult. I said it's too complex a case, and then this could not be taken. The other one is manipulation of accounts. You prepare your profit and loss account at the end of the year and find that you have a huge profit. While you're happy about it, you also have a tax bill to be paid. So they say that how do I reduce? So I inflate my expenditure, showing it as either as a payable or bring in some expenditure showing that the promoter has gotten money. When this goes out of the system, it's not white, it's not official. So that's one of the reasons. Understating consideration. We have high instance of stamp duty in our country today. I'm mainly talking about the real estate transactions, immovable properties. High instance of taxation ranging, I think in the villages it is little less than 10%, but in the metros it goes up to 24%. And then also we have capital gains tax, which according to me is moderate. The long-term capital gains tax rate in our country is, even if you take it to the highest level, it is 22.66%, which is comparable with many other advanced economies. China, it is 20%, I'm given to understand. But even with that, stamp duty being a deterrent, the large number of transactions, all of us know, that has been a little more candid and open in saying that when you want to sell land, people ask how much is it, 70-30 or 60-40? Am I right? Yes or no? This is how it happens. It is an open secret. Everyone knows about it, but no one wants to talk openly about it. But I would be a little candid in making this statement. So 60-40, what's going to happen now? Even if you want to do it 60-40, where is that 40 going to come from? There are restrictions on withdrawal from the banking system. That is something which the PM would find some consolation in what he has done. So I was quickly trying to highlight everyday examples we have it right in front of our eyes happening. This black money is getting generated. And is that going to stop? No. The Indian experiment itself has failed. Morarji Desai for Mumbai, 1978. At that point of time, when he withdrew 10,000, 5,000 and 1,000 currency notes was withdrawn, and then barely 3 years from now, the black money economy as a percentage grew by 5%. Barely 3 years from 1978. In the early 80s, it seemed to be growing, and because there are ways out, people are averse to taxes. Even when you have something like gain, which is so much of a fortune, paying 30% tax is something huge mind block we have in our system. So these are the main routes, or rather sources through which black money is created. Next one, please. And where is it lying? That is something which Thomas Isaac made a statement. Our Honorable Finance Minister made a statement that black money is not kept in black money is not kept in chakal ketti vechirikkalana minister not kept in sacks. Black is not in sacks. So this move of demonetization cannot really bring out the real estate transaction, except that there's a dip in prices. If there's a desperate sale, probably you would hit a loss, incur a loss and exit. Accounts abroad, still, that is what the government started as a promise, as the Swiss bank, not only Swiss bank, go to Middle East. We operate in the Middle East, we have office in Dubai. So in the discussions, I'm not sharing any business secret, but then in the kind of transactions happening. Yesterday there was a call from a friend of mine, not a client, said a transaction is taking place for 100 crores. And surprisingly, all white transaction. All white transaction. And the buyer of this particular property is in Dubai. So what's the best way to reduce the, got to be white, he wants everything to be paid in white. How do you reduce the instance of capital gains tax and associated problems? So the answer is very quick. You know what happens in Dubai, or the whole of Middle East for that matter. And it's completely free, it is completely tax free. But let me also tell you, given the dip in the oil prices and no signals of it going up because Trump is hell-bent on pumping out more of shale, and the shale versus shale wars would continue, and therefore entire Middle East is looking at alternative sources of income. Dubai would in 1 year from now, we understand that move on to a VAT regime. They will first taxing services, transactions. So things are happening that way, but then the easiest thing is if your buyer is in Dubai, and if some of the close relatives of your seller here are in Dubai, part of that could be transferred there, that could be brought in here later. This is not a solution I suggested, something somebody was asking. So here, Dr. Raghav knows me very well, so that smile doesn't suggest anything per se. So this happens, and then how does that come back to our country? It comes back to our country as a gift, I'm telling you. And if I'm giving tax planning tips, a fees could be paid to CPPR, not to me directly. Yeah, okay, fine. So that comes back as a gift because my son was working in the Middle East for 10 years. He sends me a check for 10 crores. Now this is how things happen, and therefore real estate and accounts abroad in multiple accounts. A friend of mine called up from Kajirapalli and said, I have given 1 lakh each to 5 of my workers, my driver and maid included, and taken a check for 90,000 each. So it's a 10% commission that my 5 lakhs is being converted into white. That is 9 into 5, 4,50,000 is. I would get it later. And can the missionary, is the missionary really equipped to go into that kind of a detailed examination? To my knowledge, no. 2,50,000 is the limit they have mentioned for the scrutiny. And what is remaining in gold? And a scare has been sent that if you have gold beyond a certain amount, then you would be caught. I don't think so. It's not fully correct. The scare is not there. Is there something required there? I'll give an example. Someone who is, let's say, an upright businessman, we know, a friend of ours, Pachasa Chitlapalli, from out of his dividend income. V-Guard is a profit-making company, and V-Guard is a multi-bagger. As a surprise for the capital market, a share which was issued at 82 rupees in 2008, we went up to 1,900. After the split into 1 rupee share, it's 189 today. It's a surprise for everyone. And from out of his dividend, he goes to Josco and buys 1 kg of gold because he fancies it. It's a hypothetical example. Or to keep his wife happy. He keeps it at home. There's absolutely nothing wrong in doing that. Only if it is unexplained, everywhere it's unexplained, that there is a problem. So gold, it's not going to come out the way one expects. Unless there is that kind of a search and seizure happening, I think I doubt it. And in cooperatives and NBFCs, here there's a huge hue and cry, particularly in Kerala, that cooperatives are divine, sacred, they should not be touched. But let me tell you that cooperatives today work under, very unfortunate to say, totally irregulated environment. There is no audit in cooperatives. Chartered accountants have been pushing for external audit by, not that audits by chartered accountants are perfect. I remember, they have MP Ravan sir, Mandri, Kannur, and Nivedana. അപ്പോൾ പുള്ളി വളരെ ചിരിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് പറഞ്ഞു, ചാർട്ടർ അക്കൗണ്ട്സിന്റെ ഓഡിറ്റ് പോരാ, നിങ്ങൾ പലരും ആ പേപ്പറിന്റെ അടിയിൽ മാത്രം ഒപ്പിടുന്ന ആൾക്കാരാണ്, മുകളിൽ എന്തുകൊണ്ടെന്ന് നോക്കാതെ. So it's a minister's version of, I'm criticizing my own profession and maybe some of the members, black sheeps everywhere. So here, cooperatives do not have professionalism. They are not leveraged on technology. They want to be totally insulated. How can that happen? So much crores of money, live on corporate societies. Urban cooperatives are not subjected to audit. There are no professionals on the board. It's only political appointments which are happening there. So they cannot expect immunity. Therefore, they are going to come under the scanner. Another one is NBFCs. It's an open secret. You know that all the 3 Muthuts have been raided by the Income Tax Department. Because that is after the IDS, Income Disclosure Scheme, was notified, before its closure. Because unaccounted money goes into, because they are all that, what's going to happen is all going to be KYC related. Wherever KYC is weak and absent, people go and park unlimited amount of money. That's going to come under the scanner. And currency which is lying in your own hand, you know, Indian rupee kandilla, Jagadish Srikumara, Narathan 2 tile cash cinema. Currency, locals currency only would surface. So what percentage of that is going to be there? And the black money market of India is 30 lakhs crores. It's 30 trillion, 20% of GDP. And no one should say, oh my God, because the Asian average stands at 25 to 26%. The African listing is up to 40%. And the Latin American, even worse, is up to 45%. So this is not something which is peculiar to India. In some of the earlier presentations, people sitting in the US would say that India is a haven for all these kind of malpractices. But everyone adds to this in a different way or no. So I'm not justifying black money. It should not happen. I told you the reasons and how it is accumulated. About 20% of GDP is a concern essentially. And as we go by, I think my views would become clear. Next one, please. The immediate effect is this: 2 lakh outlets still, and in places like the northeast, with hardly 5,000, less than 5,000 ATMs, people are Aam Aadmi has been put to. And 2,000 rupee note ennu parayunna keeramuttiya marikka. I share with you a very recent experience. I was traveling from Tirupati to Katpadi to catch the train. അപ്പോൾ ഡ്രൈവർ ഒരു നല്ല ജഗദീഷ് പറഞ്ഞത് എല്ലാവർക്കും മലയാളം അറിയാമല്ലോ അല്ലേ? Is that okay? Okay, fine. Yeah, so he took me and he was driving at 122, not to miss the train, very well behaved. So I wanted to give him some tips. And since we reached 20 minutes in advance, we had dinner together. I had a masala dosa, he had chapati. Bill was only 140 rupees. ഞാൻ പേഴ്സ് എടുത്ത് നോക്കുമ്പോൾ എൻ്റെ കയ്യിൽ ഒരു 2000 രൂപയുടെ നോട്ടും ഒരു 150 രൂപയുള്ളൂ 10 രൂപ ടിപ്പും കൊടുത്തു ഐ ലെഫ്റ്റ് ഇറ്റ് ഓൺലി വിത്ത് 2000 marks. So I asked him, I told him, Jagadish, thank you so much, you're so well behaved. Nalla ottita, vandi nalla ottita, we have reached on time, thank you very much. I said 500. He said, can I? He didn't have change. Then he went to a pathology thing, he asked, it is not there. 2 ATMs closed. And you know what he did? Sir, unga kitte change ille 2000 enna panna pora train la tea saapna enna panunga neenga 100 rupees vechuko sir. He offered. Seriously, this happened. And I said, no, Jagadish, andha mari pannadinga. You do one thing, you lent me 500 rupees. He gave me 500. I paid 300 as a tips, 200 I kept for myself. And I came back and I got this bank account. It's still in my mobile. I can show it as proof. I sent back the 500. You know, this is how things happen. It's so difficult. I'm giving a simple example to things happen. So because of the poor planning which is done, and also that we come to understand that a lot of nexus between high-level bankers and this is happening. So instead of the money percolating down to the common man, the way it should be, particularly lower denominations, have been hoarded and they passed on to, unfortunately, they say it did not have the required effect. The next one is even more interesting. This is a bank. Next slide, please. The bank employee was as beautiful as Vidya Balan at 10 a.m. in the morning, became Nagavali by 5 p.m. My cousins work for a bank, and then she tells me that Jomon Cheta, it is hell for us. Till we are praying for December 30th to come and then take a break. Even Christmas, we are not going to get good sleep. So this is immediate effect in light vein. This is all there on WhatsApp and all those things. I just googled up and found this to be very relevant. And Vidamata, because even at 5 o'clock, yesterday 2 of the banks were, garavod and they were not allowed to go. Next one, please. So the negative short-term impact is that the business activity overall has been pulled down drastically. Agri sector, particularly perishables. You would have seen that the vegetables and fish and all what perishables have gone down because you have to somehow sell. Desperate selling is happening. Rural India is very badly affected. It's come to a standstill. Retail are the worst hit. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was connected to a dealer of a luxury car, Mercedes-Benz. He's saying that luxury car segment, travel, tourism, all that is very badly affected. If you go to hotels where you think that is mostly paid by cards, even in star hotels, most of the spending that happens either out of the excess cash we have, whether it is black or white, I don't want to say, but all that is being this. And even the capital market. Why do I say even the capital market? Is because capital market, over a period of time, SEBI and the regulators had made it entirely formalized through the banking channel. You cannot make payment for your share purchases or sales through a broker or NSE or BSE through cash. It's all bank transactions. Even with that, because the general mood of the economy going down, that it is tanked so much that it's still trying to recover. Same has happened with insurance. Insurance also, it is totally cash free now. You cannot pay your insurance premium by cash. Even there also this thing. And liquidity in the market is totally gone. Real estate is dead. Because the 60-40 is not going to work immediately, you have restrictions on withdrawal. So this is the negative short-term impact, which as Dr. Martin Bush, it would take, I think it's wishful thinking that it would bounce back in 6 to 8 months. It's going to be even longer. Because there is, my last slide would probably talk about the remonetization challenge. So the next slide, please. And the long-term macro thinking, which has apparently failed as we stand and deliberate today evening, is that 3 trillion of the 15.40 trillion is 1 lakh crores. Some of the students here, it's 1 lakh crores. So 15 lakhs 40,000 crores of that already, as on yesterday, 12.44 trillion has come back. And we have 15 days to go. It is towards the end that this kind of things happen. A lot of planning is still on, multiple accounts and parking bills and all that will happen. Real estate transactions can still happen at inflated prices, and if somebody has a way of either exchanging or getting this deposited in multiple accounts would still do the plan. And the cost of the whole exercise, Doctor, I think it's 1.5 lakh crores, 1.32 lakh crores. The whole cost of this demonetization exercise is 1.32 lakh crores. So even if another 1.5 trillion comes back into the banking system, it is going to be a barabar situation. The cost incurred and the benefit that would emerge. What will happen if this doesn't happen? Let me use an accountant terminology. Notes issued as a liability on the balance sheet of the Reserve Bank. So that doesn't come back. It's like me saying that a liability in my balance sheet is no more payable. I write it back as income. And RBI's income goes to the government's coffers, correct me if I'm wrong. And then that would probably bring down the fiscal deficit. This was the macro thinking, which if this doesn't work out, is going to fail. And the quick statistics is this, 12.44 trillion, only 3 trillion more to come. Even if 1.5 comes back, the whole exercise, all fuss which we have had, the whole trouble which the common man has undergone, you and I included, is not going to bear any result. It looks like that. So, on the next slide. And the long-term hope is this. But factually, after this started, lending has gone down and many of the loans are getting repaid, particularly in the cooperatives, because cash could be, they're accepting cash for repayment of loans. So the long-term hope is that the swollen banking system, because so much of crores of black money which is lying in lockers, in hand as cash, very well, and I was also saying that Bhajimarade Raisen Shrevangal Porto Bartavaria good is in the cash. Okay. All that will get into the banking system and it will swell by whatever amount is going to come and get deposited. Naturally, when that happens, they come in the form of deposits. Nobody is going to park it in savings bank. So they have to pay the interest, and interest rates on that will come down. And there will be a spread, and naturally the lending rates even for commercial lending might come down to a sub 10% level. That would probably boost the economic activity and put back the GDP and the growth. Growth estimates have been pegged down already from 7.4% to 7 or even less. That has already happened. So, but then it can also have an inflationary effect, which economists are better placed to discuss. This is my macro view of the thing, and I think we have one more slide to go. Yeah, now coming to what has happened and how do we remonetize. Remonetization challenge is that, the printing, the governmental system, they have just placed the, invited quotations for ink and paper and for the printing. So the latest statistics is that if the 4 presses, printing locations work at the present capacity, doing 80% 500 currency and 20% 2000 currency notes, it's going to take 461 days, which is more than 1 year and 100 days. And if you are printing 50-50, which would be disastrous because this 2000 is something was creating what I had in Tarpani, the dilemma and the 10 minutes trouble which I had. But Jagadish was very good. Those are the kind of guys we will promote the nation. Not the real white collar guys like. So expected time, present capacity is going to be 295 days. So when will we get the money? When will we get the cash? And every day knee-jerk corrections. Okay, for wedding you can withdraw 2,50,000. Tomorrow they would say for cremation up to 1 lakh you can do. If somebody dies out of this, that's happening. And then the dream of moving to a digital economy. A long journey from 3% to at least 90% of digital economy. I had this problem when I was traveling to Tirupati via Coimbatore. There was a Rotary function and I had to pay a registration fees of 2,500 rupees. Luckily I had the pink 2,000 rupees. Here I have a rose milk undakkunna Paladika, badam kalakka, 2,000 note mix it rose milk undakka. I had the pink money with me, 2,000. Another 500 I paid. And my friend, his name is also Joe, chartered accountant. Then I realized I didn't have enough cash. So I said, can I pay by card? Then some Paytm guy or somebody was there, he tried, you download the app, and we tried for half an hour, it didn't work for me. But then that's because of my incapability. But let me tell you that today, if you say that digital economy is a long distance dream, all these Bengali workers, I mean in the sense that they have all connectivity, whenever they get into Wi-Fi mode, they watch all what is not required. So asking them to go and download an app is not going to be very difficult. And today, if I have a problem with my the new gen, with my smartphone or the laptop, it's my 7th standard son who fixed it. So the new gen is very, but then to the real people in the villages where connectivity, internet, what we call penetration is still very bad. Going into digital economy would be very difficult, but the urban population would surely catch up. That's why I say that it makes sense to invest in all those Paytm. In fact, recently there was an article in the business line saying that this digital economic conversion, even if it's not to the extent expected, would bring a lot of value to many of these payment gateways and the advertising. Every bank which has not been heard of so far is running a full page advertisement saying that we are the most tech savvy bank, you have ePay, RPay and all those things. So that's happening, that's going to be. So it's a long journey. With all that, I think I would conclude saying that not thought out, not going to bring about the required result, unfortunately. But it was a bold move. Only a person like Narendra Modi can make a bold move. Many other governments did not have this thing, but then unfortunately, this is turning out to be a damp squib at the end of the day. And if that doesn't happen, all this trouble which you're going to have at least for 1.5 years, which will pull down the economy at a time when the whole world is looking up to India, not down to India now, up to India with a lot of favor and hope, would be let down so badly. Untimely, not planned properly, and very poorly executed. With that, I think I would conclude with a big thank you to everyone.